What up guys, this is Versus Z and welcome to week 3. For this week I'm going to bring you S.I.C Kiwami Tamashii, Momotaros Imagin from the Kamen Rider series Kamen Rider Den-O. For more information on these S.I.C figures or S.I.C Kiwami Tamashii, check out Giltar's introduction to S.I.C. It's a very informative video, so if you're curious or want to know anything about them, please do check it out. This figure was released by Bandai in July of 2010. Series number 13, and this does retail for 1,200 yen, which is roughly 13 to 14 US dollars. There's no indication of that on the box, by the way. Also on the back, and as usual, you get some clean promotional pictures of the figure. Momotaros in a straight stance, in an Indian style sitting pose, kind of thinking to himself, and him holding his Momotaro sword. Pretty cool name, right? Before I get into details of this character, I want to kind of, introduce you to the character. Momotaros Imagin, if you're not familiar with the series, and Imagin are basically the antagonists of the Kamen Rider Den-O universe. Momotaros and his pals actually choose a different path, and they choose not to carry out the Imagin's plot. Momotaros is also very short-tempered, very arrogant, but he's also very comedic. Now for the details. As you can see, he's covered in basically a very dark gray, majority of red, and some few black trims here and there. And I don't know if you can tell here, and I actually had to look maybe 3 or 4 times to figure this out, but his armor, the plating on his shins, thighs, forearms, and that's pretty much it, are actually a very, very nice metallic red with a coat of maybe silver or gold underneath, with the black trim of course. But then what's interesting is that his chest panels, his shoulder panels, and that's pretty much it. His chest panel, shoulder panels, and his back are actually clear plastic with the silver or gold paint underneath, which gives off this nice effect, which kind of tricked my eye into thinking the rest of the body was clear red. But no, this here is a solid red, kind of a metallic solid red. But here it's clear plastic, clear red plastic, which is very interesting. You also have a paint inconsistency on his face. I could be just the camera, but I noticed it in my own eye, even though I'm colorblind with red, that the red on his face, his jaw, is actually a little bit darker. And even here on the mask part for his eyes, he also has some of that clear red plastic here on his horns. So it all looks really cool. He has this Oni motif, even though I do believe the Oni are some of the enemies in Den-O anyway. There's some irony in Momotaros' character throughout the entire series. Momo comes with an alternate swap out face with red eyes, which you can easily just pull out by holding one of his horns or just grabbing the entire mask. And there's a hole in his head, and you can just peg that into that hole. By default, Momo comes with some closed fists, but you also come with some calm hands, and is it just me or those hearts? You also get a set of 2 hands made to hold his sword, called the Momotaro sword. And if you do it enough, you can pretty much hold his Momotaro sword with both hands, and in the end it's just a matter of adjusting the arms in the right position. His articulation remains the same as with many other S.I.C Kiwami Tamashii figures. His head can go up and down, that's a surprise, and also rotate. So it's really neat because he really doesn't have a sculpted collar in the way. It's pretty much the design there. Arms can rotate, they're on that sort of the ball joint, not so much apparent here because of this floating armor piece that needs to really be flush with the rest of his torso. You get the rotation at the bicep, and once again with the 2-point of bend at the elbow with the hinge there, and then the ball joint inside the forearm. And one thing I kept forgetting in the other reviews is because of the ball joint in the forearms, you can even get the forearm to rotate, not just on the bicep, but even on the forearms as well. So just thought I'd add that in there and make sure that was clear. Also the wrists rotate and they're on ball joints. You have the torso, which can move side to side, back and forward. Legs can go back about that far, which is not too bad. Kick forward that far. There's also rotation at the thigh. Kick out that far of the body because of these huge plates on his thighs. Double jointed knee bend, of course. And this is where it gets a little different. Unlike the previous S.I.C Kiwami Tamashii figures that I've reviewed, his ankle joint is where the rotation is at. You also get the pivot up and down. But I don't know about that third joint. It feels like it's there, but I think it's because these ankle pieces here are just too big that it won't allow that to happen. I can see that it is there, it's moving, but it's just not very effective because of just how these ankles are built. It is there, all three of those points of articulation are there, except slightly hindered. Alright, Momo, final climax time? Alright. So, Momotaros' posability is just as great as any other Kiwami Tamashii figure I've reviewed. The only issue is because of the hindrances on his ankles, he can't get a flat foot stance on whatever surface you put him on. If you're familiar with Transformers or any other figure that doesn't really have an ankle joint, then you're probably going to have to put up with that if you get Momotaros. For me, it's not too big of a problem, but for others, it might be. Isn't this pose just great? Now, of course, he is using support from S.I.C Kiwami Tamashii Den-O, but you can actually get Momotaros to do a pose like this without support, just as long as you work with the legs in the right way, position them in the right way. Trust me, I've done it. It's actually pretty awesome. Yes, you can even do poses like this. It's completely okay. Alright, so for my final thoughts, I'm going to give this figure an 8 out of 10. He's got his great articulation, very neat sculpt, very interesting design, very different, and will stand out in your collection. Like I said, he's got the basic articulation of any S.I.C Kiwami Tamashii figure that we've all reviewed so far, except the fact that because of the way his ankles are sculpted and molded, you sort of get a hindrance in the foot rotation, which is normally there, which is there physically, but it is hindered because of the way the ankles are sculpted, and that could be a huge knock against the figure considering balance and stability is an issue, and so that kind of knocks some points down. Also, the fact that this isn't really, to me, is not something that I would say, oh, go out and get it, it's a must-have. I can really only say that to fans of the Den-O series or fans of Momotaros himself. He isn't, of course, the main Kamen Rider in the series, though he does assist in becoming the main Kamen Rider of the series, so it's kind of confusing, and unless you know the story of Den-O or the story of Momotaros, then you're not going to really understand what I'm getting at here. So really, I can only recommend this to fans. He is there, you know, the articulation and all that, the detail, it's all there. Except, once again, the ankles, it's a bad thing if you have bad ankles. We all know that, Master Grade Exia. And just, you know, it's pretty much an unknown character to those who aren't familiar. He might look cool enough to some, and if that's enough for you to get interested in getting the figure, then, well, don't let it stop you. It is an interesting figure. The red paint apps, even the red clear plastic, not just paint apps, but it is great overall. So he's still going to get an 8 out of 10. And that's really all I can say about the figure. There's not much to say. Like I said, once again, he's really only for the fans. So that's it for the review. I hope you guys enjoyed and got something out of this in some way. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of Riderfest.